And here we go again, the Rebels Edge. We are back. John is not here. I do have Marc LoPresti. I'm the luckiest guy in the world because let me tell you something. He's well-dressed. He's a New York-looking guy. I mean, he's got it all covered. He is in New York right now. I'm down in Florida. And Mark, where in God's earth is John today? I mean, honestly, I think he's going to start getting a check for working those counters at all the airports that he is because he's almost one of the extra workers out there at the airport.
Yeah, that or he's going to release a guide to the airport lounges of the world because half of the calls I do with him is from, the Delta Platinum Lounge. Well, John is actually on the way to Madrid.
That's right.
Where he will be doing God's work. Well, maybe not God's work, but our work on behalf of Mineta Advisory Partners as a featured speaker at the Elite Family Office Conference run by our friend Neil Green. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's tough, but somebody's got to do it. You
can't nail the guy down. I mean, honestly, this year, now we're only March 1st, as we know, but we've got 2 months into the year, and I think that guy has been somewhere on the road for 6 weeks of the 8. I mean, it's just literally, he's over there skiing in Switzerland one day, he's in Italy doing something else, he's back in the States, then he's gone, then he's the PR, then he's here. I mean, I cannot keep up, Mark. It's an amazing thing. And he's the older brother. I mean, if he was my younger brother, I'd be like, God, that's great that he's got the energy. I don't know how the hell he does it.
I have no idea either, Pete. No idea either.
And he's even got the occasional stop in New York just to do a little bit of Fox. He gets on there with Charles, kicks it around for a little while, and then he's gone. I mean, it's amazing. But we look forward to seeing you guys whenever you guys are on Fox. I know you're on there fairly frequently as well as John. And so we're privileged to have you today. Well, why don't we kick it off with the macro minute, Jared? And Jared's behind the scenes. I forgot to mention him, but here we go with the macro minute. So I'm going to say this, Mark. Inflation is sticky. Inflation is stubborn. The 10-year is close to 4. The dollar is close to 105. That's my macro. What do you got?
Yeah, I like a lot of people, I'm trying to figure out, we have an unprecedented correlation between the bond market and the equity market. And it's something that most professional traders haven't seen in their lifetime because you have to go back, 20 plus years, not for old guys like you and me, of course, Pete, but you got to go back 20 years. Look, my macro minute is really sort of a tech check. And since we talk so much about Chat GPT, the pace of innovation, all of the potential threats to Google's business, we'll talk about Google later in the show. The pace of innovation is increased so exponentially. It took Netflix 3.5 years to get 1 million users. It took Facebook 10 months to get 1 million users. Spotify, 5 months. ChatGPT got 1 million users, Pete, in 5 days. 5 days. That's how quickly innovation is running in this environment. So competition, red hot.
It is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And the whole world of AI has taken over. It really has. And it's funny because a lot of people are just hearing about it now, Mark. This has been in the works for quite a long time. And all you have to do is go back when NVIDIA kind of got everybody pumped up about it. And everybody forgets about that. But that will be the foundation of this whole thing. All right, so let's jump it on. We've got a bunch of different stocks that we want to hit as fast as we can for people. I'm going to start off with RIVN, Mark. This one, oh, my goodness, they just cannot get it right. I mean, when you look at this company, their production numbers, they're talking about 50,000 vehicles. They were supposed to be doing something closer to 60,000 vehicles. Yeah. They lowered their guidance. That's a big problem. You look at their balance sheet, that doesn't look all that great, especially when you start to look at what does the cash burn look like right now? Their cash burn, it's only $4.5 billion. I mean, that is a monster number. And their earnings, well, the earnings were okay, but then they missed on the sales. I mean, the problem is this. The stock is right there near its 52-week lows, and we're talking about $15 and thereabouts, somewhere within the $15 range for a stock on the upper end. 52-week high was 59. We all know it was even higher before that. What do you think of RIVN here? And what do you think about the numbers they put up?
Well, for anybody that listens to our Bulls, Bears, and Blockchain radio show, you'll know that I was actually optimistic about this one. I was cautiously bullish, thinking they might meet or slightly beat the street's expectations. I was wrong. I don't get it right every time. Nobody does. I was wrong. This was a big disappointment. They're burning cash, to your point, Pete, faster than a drunken sailor on shore leave, and they got to get their margins right, okay? Rivian spends $220,000 to make a car they sell for $80,000. I'm no Einstein, but that dog don't hunt, right? That math does not add up. That's a negative gross margin of 171% versus Tesla's positive gross margin of 26%. They're still a contender, though. We're going to watch this one. I was very disappointed, but like I said, I don't get every single one right. I got this one wrong.
Nope, and it's always good. We always want to highlight, everything that's good, but we're going to highlight the stuff that doesn't work for us as well. And we talk about that all the time, and it happens all the time. You just got to keep those numbers, moving in the right direction on the ones that really do work. Novavax is our next one, Mark. Now, this one is kind of interesting because, wow, you talk about a company that gave you numbers that were awful, but not on top of that, they talked about we have significant uncertainty about the future. Those are not words that you want to hear when somebody's talking about their company. And that's what they said. They're down. They're only down 93%. Their manufacturing, that's an issue. The delays, that's an issue across the board. Now let's remember this. They had a market cap of $10 billion. Now it's under $1 billion. It's actually well under $1 billion. So the company has been absolutely clocked. Their cash burn is not good. It's about $1.5 billion. That's pretty terrible. There is a huge short interest in here. So I would always caution you. This is one of those stocks like that we talk about with the meme stocks, where when it's really got a huge short, every once in a while, you see something like that start to spring up again. But the company was very, very clear about their concerns for the future. Mark, they lost $2.28. I mean, they just can't get it right. No. Is there anything about this company that I'm missing that actually looks a little bit better than what I've sort of put out there?
No, I could have summed up this stock in 3 words, Pete. COVID is over. It has been for a while, right? Their COVID drug, Nuvaxovid, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, was the darling of their product suite. And the CEO even associated with these earnings saying, we got to come up with something else, right? That was the third of his 3 points about why the business is so shitty right now. The street's taking this thing out to the woodshed off another 25.5% today. Unbelievable. Could you see a little whipsaw with the short interest as high as it is? You could, but I'd rather put my money someplace else. This is 2 thumbs down on this one.
I'm with you. I totally agree with you. And the only reason I would ever even try to do something would be with options now that it's a $6 and something stock, because you could play the options and have some opportunities there for some squeezes. But I agree with you. There is nothing about the report that actually looked good at all. Lowe's is our next one. Lowe's kind of took a little bit of a page from the Home Depot, it seems like, which makes some sense. They're obviously in the similar categories, but Mark, they actually had earnings that were pretty good. Their earnings growth is there. Their revenue, they're up 5%. So that was pretty good. But then again, you start to give some of that soft guidance, and that is something you cannot do if you want your stock to go up. You obviously have to give them people what you really think about the company, and their guidance was not very good. So that was something that was a problem. They talked about rates and how that's affecting housing. It's also affecting people as far as, well, what do they want to do? So they were working, trying to get the pros out there, right? Just like Home Depot, they were trying to get into that category. Well, the problem is if the pros aren't coming there, they're not going to Lowe's or Home Depot, because rates are at such a rate that people are like, you know what, maybe the housing thing, I'll wait a while on that. Maybe I'll put it on pause. So they expect to have the foot traffic not so great. They talked about a lot of different things, and their forecast was, well, maybe flat to maybe even down a couple of percent in terms of the revenue. I didn't see much good in this. Did you?
No, I didn't. And this is a classic story of the earnings actually weren't that bad, but missed the street's expectations. So traders punishing the company for that. But then, of course, the guidance. I just don't know, Pete, how long this can last, right? Because if you have an environment with rates rising, we saw the mortgage numbers yesterday. There was an unbelievable print in terms of low mortgage demand. At some point in time, if you're not selling, if you're not buying, you got to do the nesting thing that we talked about so much during COVID and fix the house you have. So I kind of feel like at some point in time, the question is when, but at some point in time, Lowe's and Home Depot will benefit. I'll also point out, Pete, that these are two companies that are historically conservative, which I like, historically conservative when issuing their guidance. So I wasn't that surprised to hear sort of an Eeyore type of approach, take a page from Winnie the Pooh, in Lowe's CEO's comments around this quarter's numbers.
And that is what it was. It was an Eeyore type of a deal. The next one we're going to hit is First Solar. This is not anything to do with Eeyore, as a matter of fact. These guys are flying and flying high. Mark, it wasn't too many months ago the stock was trading around 80, and I'm not sure exactly where it is now, but it was somewhere close to 180. Gives you an idea of how much of a takeoff this thing has been, absolutely ripping to the upside. Well, they're ripping again today. Last I looked, they were up anywhere from 15 to 16%. Stock was absolutely on fire.
Yep.
The Inflation Reduction Act is one of those reasons. You know, when they gave some of the guidance, I think they can lean on that, some of the money that's going to be going in that direction. But even the earnings, they did lose money. They lost 7 cents. They were expected to lose 18 cents. They did a little bit better than expected. So from that perspective, things were pretty good. They do have some operating expenses that are very, very high. And that's been one of the issues that they face. But with the money that's going to be flowing in their direction, I think that they are on the right path, Mark, to continue to have some upside. I don't know that this stock is done, despite the fact that it's more than doubled in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, my concern about the run-up on this one is you had a big chunk of these numbers coming from a non-recurring item, right, Pete, which was the sale of their Chile project. I do like the indication that the module sales, the home ownership type stuff, does look like it's headed in the right direction. And yeah, with Build Back Better and Inflation Reduction Act and helicopter money falling from the sky, thanks to a tax and spend approach from this wonderful administration that we have, that does line up and portend for good things for names like First Solar. I'm just a little bit concerned that with a run up like this, $27 just before we went live, that thing's up today. I don't know how much more gas there is in the tank to keep this rise to the upside. So if I don't already own it, I'm not chasing it here. And if I did own it, I'm taking profits. I'm thanking God I'm moving on.
Yep, you'd have to be disciplined, and you want to be disciplined, and you should be disciplined if you were lucky enough to be in this, especially on the kind of run that we're talking about. And Mark, that's exactly right. That is the crux of everything that we talk about is discipline, DDA. We did a webinar just last night. Discipline dictates action. That's always been very important for us at Market Rebellion. And I know you've absolutely implemented into your trading as well, just like that. So next, we've got some unusual option activity. I'm going to kick this off with CCJ, Chemical. We're talking about uranium. We're talking about nuclear fuel, and a stock that actually is starting to make a nice little bit of a move. It's up there near 28. I'm not sure where it is right this moment, but somebody thinks in a very short period of time that this stock has a little bit more room to go past 28. And here's why I say that. 7,200 of the March 3rd calls, the 28 strike calls getting bought today. 22 cents up to about 32 cents. Not a lot of money, risk reward, but understand this, these do expire on Friday. So you must know that in terms of the backstory there. But it really is interesting. We also did have some buyers, even at a higher strike, but going far further out into the future. So that one got interesting too. So we're seeing a little bit of option paper in there. Makes it pretty interesting to me. I jumped into this one just so everybody's well aware. It will be something I'll watch very closely, including today. It might only be a few hours of a trade, maybe a day of a trade, but it only has 3 days before they expire. Mark, what have you got?
Very interesting. So I've got a trade with the same expiration. We're talking Friday, March the 3rd, bullish call buying in Google, 4,000 of the March 10 calls at 96, the stock at 90 and change. Definitely some bullish indications. This is a company that has been absolutely punished this year, 40% off its all-time high. A lot of it on concerns of that chat GPT, that generative AI thing we talked about at the top of the show. That's going to come, it's the reaper at the door of Google's search business. And two things happen really, Pete. One is the reality has set in that that's not really the case. And if it is the case, it's certainly really far out. And certainly search revenue and ad revenue down in an environment where all of these platforms saw reduced ad spend in the fourth quarter. But cloud revenue, that data infrastructure that I love so much, cloud revenue going up 5.5 billion a year ago to 7.3 billion for 2022. That's a nice, healthy increase and expected to continue. I like this options trade.
Yep, it's great to see that one. And it's been pretty active, Mark. We've seen a fair amount of different days, not every single day, but we have seen call buying in Google now for a while. And not too terribly long ago after earnings, stock was up well over 107. So This is a stock that's pulled back a little bit. Maybe there's some room to start making a move to the upside.
I think there is.
Yep. Next, we're going to hit the sports. We got, we like to call it Pete's Sport Clips. So maybe someday we'll have some sort of, sponsorship thing going on with the Sports Clips guys. But anyway, traditional powers, they're back. March Madness is on. I mean, we are right on the cusp of it, Mark. I'm a basketball freak. People don't really know that about me. They think, oh, you're just a football guy and that's all you ever do. No, I had season tickets to the Timberwolves, the Golden Gophers, all the way back to the point when I was just a little guy when we first moved from California to Minnesota. Love it and continue to love it. And I'll tell you that what I like is a lot of those traditional schools are back. They'd slid out for a while, but they're back. And here's what I mean by that. Arizona, these guys, I think, are going to be somewhere in that, we're talking about who's going to be rated in the top group, number 1, number 2 type seeds and so forth. Houston is back. Kansas has been back. They've been great. UCLA is back. Marquette is back. Arizona is back. Wait a minute. Alabama's a football school. They're there, though. I mean, they are not one of the traditional schools, but Mark, these guys have been on and off being somewhere either the number 1 team in the country or something very close to it all year. These guys are absolutely incredible. The athletes that they've got, they've had some issues that I'm not going to get into that right now, but outside of that, on the court itself, they have been absolutely amazing. There's one other school, Purdue, that I'd point out. And we talked about a kid named Zach Edey. You probably never heard of him, Mark. He's only a 7'4", 315-pound center who leads the country in a couple of different categories. But the guy's a rebounding freak. He's a shot blocking freak. Oh, and by the way, he can score some points pretty well for that team also. So he's kind of the Shaquille O'Neal of what we're seeing in college basketball right now. I'm going to give you a sleeper, and I'll let you go where you want to go, but you might have a sleeper yourself. I'm going to say the University of Indiana, another traditional school. I know Bobby Knight's not been there for a long time, but a traditional school that's been around for a long time, always seems to be somewhere very deep into March Madness. They got a kid named Trace Jackson Davis. He's a rebounding machine. He's a scoring machine, 6'9", 245-pound. Very, very well-built dude who will be a force in the NBA. But I think with him at the lead, they've beat Purdue twice this year, once at home and once on the road. Meanwhile, Purdue, when they beat them, was number 1 in the country. So Indiana's got something, I think, behind them as well. You got any sleepers or anybody that you're interested in? I mean, March Madness is always fun, man.
There's no doubt about it. And one thing I got to point out with all of the basketball and the tickets that you say that you guys have currently, we got to get you and Loopy to the other side of Florida for a Heat game. Because that is just Miami just does basketball different, like it does most things different. How do you like Georgetown's prospects?
Georgetown's interesting. They're not the Georgetown of old. That Patrick Ewing's been the coach. It's not really worked out the way they'd like. There's other schools. You and I were joking about this beforehand when I said Gonzaga. I'll tell you what, the state of Minnesota has not only just been a hockey state for a long, long time. They have turned into one of the top basketball states. Yeah. We've sent 2 kids to Gonzaga over the last couple of years who a year after they got there were already in the NBA, somewhere in the top 5 picks in the draft. So Gonzaga is an unbelievable school. They're not the school that they've been in the past. But, they could get kind of interesting. I think there's some sleepers out there, though. Maryland is another one that's kind of near and dear to where you have been a lot of your life up there on the East Coast or whatever. So they're always been kind of fun, but they've gotten to be a pretty daggone good basketball team as well.
Well, I think it's time to get out our March Madness squares and start filling them out. So I'm excited.
I like it. All right. So next, The NFL Combine, we talked about it on Monday, Mark. We talked about it yesterday. We're talking about it again today because this week is the Combine week in the NFL. And it's another madness, which is, you know, you look at these players, what they did, everybody looks at the film, and then you go to the Combine and suddenly somebody who shouldn't has gone up from being somewhere in the 4th round to the 1st round just because they ran a fast 40. If they're so fast, why didn't we see that on the film? But that's a story for a different time. I think there will be some sleepers, and I think there could be some very interesting sleepers as well in this one. I'm going to give you some, and I think you might have a sleeper or two yourself, but I'm looking at the kid from John's, you know, where his heart is these days at Tulane. He's got Tyjae Spears. He's a running back out of Tulane. Now, I didn't get a chance to watch this kid all year, except in the bowl game against USC, and the kid has a little bit of magic to him. I mean, he is really, really something special. I like that kid a lot. There's a kid named Roshan Johnson at Texas. Here's what makes him interesting. So Bijan Robinson is the running back. Everybody says this guy's the best running back in college football this past year, and he was. He's unbelievable. This is his backup. But his backup was up for the Campbell Award. His backup is almost as good. He's just a shade different than him. He's one of the leading running backs in the entire nation, and he's the second stringer behind Bijan.
Yeah,
so,
what does that tell you?
Yeah, it tells me Texas has a heck of a lot of talent, and that coach should have won more games. but in any case, heck of a player, and obviously it shows that the Campbell Award, by the way, just so people know, that has to do with academics off the field as well as what you do on the field, all those things combined, and he was a semifinalist for that. So this kid is a smart kid, a good kid, and a heck of a football player, so I'm wishing the best for him. So what do you got? You got any sleepers for me, man?
Well, I think I do, Pete. And in keeping with the Texas Friday Night Lights tradition, and by the way, I've spent a lot of time, as your brother knows, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, I've spent a lot of time in Midland and Odessa where all of that took place in my adventures in trying to make money in oil and gas. Yeah. But Texas has an incredible tradition of creating some unbelievable athletes that have done incredibly well in the NFL. We're looking at Devin Achane from Texas A&M, running back, incredible speed, looking as a fantastic pick. And then my second one, maybe not so much a sleeper, obviously Bryce Young probably topping a lot of people's lists, but this guy really personifies, I think, what is the modern quarterback in the league. Little bit smaller, really fast, able to run the ball. And so those are the two prospects that I like best right now.
I like them. I think those are great picks. And I think I love Bryce. My only concern is what you mentioned, though. He is small. And that is something that we can take away from the Combine, because sometimes it might happen where they list a guy at 6'3" and 240 pounds, and all of a sudden you get him and you go, wait a minute, this guy's 6'1" and 210. I mean, you know, what the hell is that? So, I don't know what Bryce's real stats will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're even a little bit smaller than was reported going in. We'll find out, but I've seen him enough where I know he's got a great talent. He's a great kid and had an unbelievable career himself, and Alabama just keeps on putting them out, man. I mean,
they at 5'11" and under 200 pounds. This is a small guy, right?
Yeah,
but and you're seeing more of that in quarterbacks.
And that does concern me, though. I mean, only because when you've got these linebackers out there, John and I were talking about that, and that's the first group, the D linemen and linebackers, the first ones on the field tomorrow. Mark, some of these linebackers are 6'5", 250. I mean, that guy gets a hold of and he just gets a good running start, and Bryce doesn't see him. That's where things get a little bit dicey.
He'll be airborne really quick.
Right. Because that's why the Josh Allens of the world and some of the bigger guys, if you're going to run, you better be able to get away from people and hopefully be able to take a hit. Well, Mark, thank you so much, man. Really, really appreciate it. It's always great. You do an unbelievable job. And I can't tell you how much I thank you, but it's always fun to be with you, and look forward to seeing you the next time. Folks, have a great day. This is The Rebel's Edge.
Introducing our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. Next up, this June in Sonoma County, California. Savor some of the finest wines in America while you level up your trading with Pete Najarian, John Najarian, AJ Monty, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Sonoma is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention, so act now. Tickets are going fast.